This pilot episode of our new podcast, The Knitwit, is brought to you by Linda's Fabrics, the store for all your sewing, knitting, mending, fabric, and quilting needs.
Oh, yes.
Big thank you to the company for gifting us with the many yards of yarn we've been using in our trials. With patient support staff, you can take your projects straight into the store and get their guidance, and let me tell you, we've been using it. So please, if you're in need of some quilting expertise, waltz over to the nearest Linda's Fabrics, where no purl is enough.
Wow, it sounds great. I'm going to Linda's Fabrics today.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. That was real good. A strong start to the Knitwits. And speaking of which, welcome, fellow nerds, fellow quilters, I suppose, to our first episode of The Knitwit, the show where us two twits talked about writting, but now talked about knitting and quilting and sewing and crocheting and all that stuff. Sorry, listeners. Dave and I have officially given up as writers and decided to...
We're so awful.
I mean, yeah. We had to realize it eventually. I mean, have you read my book? Like, I appreciate you being nice to the reviewing, but, like, I don't know. Like, I just...
Well, I mean, in last honor of the show, the old show, it is still available at Amazon.com.
Cheap plug. It's a very cheap plug because it means nothing anymore.
Exactly. Well, no, but that's the thing. You know, I just figured as a final tribute we had to.
Oh well, thank you. I mean, I've never really been one for sentimentality, but sure, why not? You know me to be a very harsh and
come on,
brutal man.
Sentimentality is like the best way to make quilts.
No, my quilts are very manly. It's speaking of which, what patterns will we rip off from this month, David? Well, I guess I'll go first. I mean,
okay, I was going to say, do you want me to go first, or?
I mean, you can. Oh, I mean, it's a new show. We can do whatever we want. Should we roll this dice here? I don't know where I'm going with this bit. I'll just go first.
I was about to say, is it an odd? Okay, it's you. If it's an even, it's me. I don't know. Whatever.
That's true.
Go.
Dice is 6 people. It's 6. Yeah, if I really want to get into the crafts, I need to learn how many sides there are on a die.
Well, okay, before you get into gaming die, which would have been more in line with our other show.
Gaming die? That's for nerds! I'm not that anymore, I'm a quilter. They can't be one and the same.
Exactly, so please talk about what patterns you'll rip off.
So, I saw this beautiful tapestry, basically. You know how I have these annual visits to the old castles of the Scottish Hills, right?
Oh, okay, yes. It's been a while since you told me about them, but yes.
I go there. It's pretty great. I went to this one. There's this beautiful tapestry. It was draped onto the side of one of the walls in the main hall. It told this whole story with its pictures, like this giant, beautifully sewn picture that showed this valiant knight rescuing a princess from a tower guarded by a terrible dragon until a beam of light came from the sky, causing the tower, the princess, and the dragon to be ascended to heaven.
Ooh, very nice.
Twist, though, the beam came from a flying saucer, with the smaller dragon piloting it. Isn't that intriguing, David?
Yes, very intriguing.
It created a beautiful metaphor about humanity's primal fear of the unknown. Dragons, aliens, flying buildings. What does it all mean?
Yeah.
I'd love to, create some sort of quilt that tells just as that much of a story with just the pictures, you know? The difference between writting and knitting is that one is more about pictures. You don't tell a story with words, and that's beautiful.
It's a very visual medium, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very beautiful. Anyone can write. That's the reason why we quit.
Very few people can quilt. Wow.
Exactly. There's a reason why we quit. This is more interesting, I think. Anyways, what patterns are you going to rip off?
I have, several times in the past when talking about myself, I might have mentioned that I only have one grandparent left.
Right.
That I really wasn't around for many of my great-grandparents. Mm-hmm. Don't worry, there's a point to this. Incidentally, I forgot to mention that I did actually live to see one great-grandparent. She, my mom's maternal grandmother, also known as my mom's mom's mom. I'm saying that 10 times fast.
My mom's mom's mom held me when I was a kid, so that's interesting that was the last one for you, too.
Created this doorstop for my room when I was very young. It was a weighted thing. You know, doorstops, they tend to be. Shaped...
I mean, what are you stopping the door with, right?
Exactly. You need something to hold the door back, right? Shaped eerily similar to a cat, down to extra raised ears and a tail that extended away from the main body.
Right.
Admittedly, it took on a more annoying character as I grew up, and it served simply to keep me one step away from closing the door on my family as a Sturm und Drang teenager.
Oh, no.
But that cat comforted me through the worst of times when I couldn't sleep without a glitter lamp lighting the room, the darkest of nights when the computer screen stopped glaring at my bed, and just about everything in between.
Right.
I realized that I loved the mix of threads when we spun off into knitting.
Good one.
And so rather than create a measly doorstop that I already had, reinventing the wheel as it were, I wanted to find a new way to recreate the cat. and settled on a relatively simple pattern, a hot pad.
Ooh, I like that.
Using similar colors, I will set about remodeling a once cat-shaped doorstop into a rectangular, because let's face it, I can't make square properly. Hot pad.
I mean, you'll learn. Well, it'll take us a bit. We'll get there.
It'll take a little while. This way, the cat's lovely face cradles everything I put atop it, since everyone knows a cat always lands on its feet.
It certainly does. Even quilt cats.
It may not be great, but between the inspiration for it, the hard work on it, and its status as my first real attempt, I'm pretty happy with the idea so far.
I mean, yeah, no, that sounds like an ambitious first project. That'll be really interesting. I mean, and if it's not really the best, that's okay. It is our first. I mean, remember our first stories? I mean...
Oh, dear Lord.
But we broke through and we got better, and then we decided that this was more for us. So, point is,
practice makes permanent.
This might be your world savers of knitting projects. For that reference, we haven't gotten to that episode yet. It's or will we? We might never know. I guess we'll be
will we? Who knows?
No one will know ever, because it's not going to be like
we gave up on the Writ, so I suppose we'll never get to that episode now.
Sorry, listeners, you're crap out of luck.
Sorry, you're never going to understand that reference. Anyways, we'll move on to our other regular segment, What We at the Nitwit Have Knit.
Indeed. As for what I have knit, I'm experiencing with alpaca wool for my latest crocheting project.
Ooh.
Have you ever used alpaca yet? It's very soft and luscious. It's kind of like sheep, but even softer.
Wow.
And also alpacas are super nice. I don't know if you've seen alpaca. They let you shave their wool. They're very friendly. They don't really spit. They spit a little, but they're basically much friendlier llamas. So.
Oh, okay. That's a good comparison. I can figure out.
I mean, they're the same family as the llama.
Right.
They're in South America and such. They're on the Indies, whatever. But they're not llamas are mean. They're freaking nasty.
Well, I imagine if they're raised in the right place, that their wool is superbly soft, and that must make it easier to work with, doesn't it, Donald?
It does. Well, llamas were more farmed for meat, so
usually
alpaca's more for wool. So
exactly,
you don't really see a lot of llama wool stuff. So that's why.
I'm not sure I've ever seen llama wool, but now that you say that, I'd almost be interested to try it. But I imagine it'd be really tough.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that'd be a very ambitious project for the next thing.
The next thing that we at the Nitwit have knit. Anyway.
Give it a go. That'd be a hell of a story with that quilt or crochet project or whatever.
Exactly. Maybe it'll be mittens. I don't know.
Ooh, I'd like
Anyway,
that.
as for what I've done.
Yes.
My remaining grandmother, as I've hinted at earlier, is very, very skilled with this kind of stuff. And so I've been asking her for a lot of advice.
Right.
I mean, it's so bad that she might as well just work for Linda's Fabrics.
Right.
Anyway, I needed to ask her about the pattern to knit some baby booties, because my extended family has been having some recent addition. My cousins have been, getting married, having kids and whatnot. Unfortunately, the first go kind of looked a little warped, because I need more practice, obviously. But hey, best to do it now before I have to gift my friends and such with them, right?
Right.
And of course, I've started work on my quote-unquote cot pad.
Yeah, I like that name.
Cat plus hot is cot.
Oh, how clever! No, it's really good.
Hopefully my jobs are a little bit more clever than my puns. I'll say that.
It's okay. We're not writers anymore. Our puns don't have to be good. So that's not what we do.
You're right. That's absolutely correct. So there we go. That's it for our pilot episode of the Nitwit.
I hope you listeners enjoy. Yeah,
since we're just getting started, we don't have much.
No worries.
We don't have much to talk about yet. We will have more later, especially if you want to get in touch with us. So next, how can they
quilt-act us? Yeah, more bad puns. Oh, I'm really excited to continue this forward. So. Basically, first off, please download the Nitwit on iTunes. Give us a like and a review. Let us know about this new direction we're going and encourage us. And,
exactly.
Prop us up. The listeners and I were all sewn together in this extravagant quilt of...
this tapestry of life.
I shouldn't do a metaphor anymore. I'm not a writer. But yeah, okay, you get what I'm going for, yeah.
Yes, but, we are still greenhorns, if you will. So if you have any helpful tips for us, particularly on those baby booties, that'd be really nice. Alpaca wool, is it really good to use? Is it not easy to come by? Llama wool, maybe you've done some of that before. Sheep's wool, for all I know.
Is that possible?
If you got any questions, comments, some pattern, and maybe suggestion for a future episode, please send us an email.
Ooh,
and the web address.
I got an idea. We could bring in silkworms for our next episode. That'd be interesting.
Although I think we'd probably be just feeding them and they wouldn't really have much to say.
Well, I'm not saying they interviewed them.
Anyway.
What would they even say? I'm a silkworm. I make silk. This is my entire life. I don't know why that's the voice I gave a silkworm. No, I meant that we actually work with silkworm and make silk, dumbass.
I'm sorry.
I'm just imagining having to have held a silkworm really close to the microphone and hope to God that they hear anything.
I don't know, but here's what you can do if you have suggestions for us.
Spider silk.
Especially if you can beat our idea of silkworms for next episode, please send us an email. The email is the same as it used to be on our old podcast, but just so you hear it again, it is Matt D, that is 2 T's before the D, at MatthewDonaldCreator.com.
Hey, how do you spell that? Like, we're not writers, so we don't know.
All right, I'll spell it out. MATTD.
Right.
At MATTHEWDONALDCREATOR.com.
Thank you. I mean, creator still fits.
Your own email.
We're all
you can do that, or you can go to the contact page on the website, and that will also get directly to us.
I will update the website to make it more...
If you want to specify which host, please include names, because obviously we share Matt D in common. David or Donald would be great. Unless we change our names, which honestly, we've been doing this for how long? And obviously a new podcast.
Yeah, I think our names are fine. We don't just
okay, I was about to say if this is a new podcast, we should celebrate it by changing our names so they aren't so similar. We'll think about that for next time, listeners. Okay, but fine. Anyway, there are other places that you can quill-tact Donald.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you can quill-tact me on my Facebook at Matthew Donald Creator, which I'm going to update now with more sewing and quilting and knitting stuff. Make it more fitting with my new hobby. Or Twitter at MatthewDonald64. Why 64? Because my largest quilt was 8 feet by 8 feet. Simple enough.
Until next month, then. Keep those needles going, listeners.
Bye-bye. See you later.
And thank you for listening to this pilot episode of The Nitwit, where us two twits talk about knitting.
Indeed.
The
April Fools!
We didn't give up on writing? Come on!
What do you think we are, idiots? I mean, we are idiots, but...
With that said, welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of the Writ, where us two twits who love to talk about writting have even more fun coming up with elaborate April Fool's Day jokes.
We certainly do. Oh my god, that was great. I know it's not April 1st, but, it's April Fools, not April 1st Fools. Lighten up, listeners.
Well, I mean, we couldn't get it out on April 1st. Schedule didn't allow, so sorry for that. But, hey, we had to have our fun. And,
that's okay.
There actually was kind of an inspiration for this. We'll get through our regular stuff and then talk about that first. So, to get to our usual stuff, because we need to get through it quickly now, what will we rip off this month?
Okay, in terms of writing, yes.
Donald, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, yes. I am going to rip off Pacific Rim Uprising. This is the sequel to Pacific Rim. It just came out a couple weeks ago. I've been really excited for this one. The first one is one of my all-time favorite movies. I go back and forth between it and the first Avengers, for which one's my absolute favorite, I heard this one had more mixed reception. The critics didn't like it nearly as much, but, to be fair, the reason why they didn't like it was it's just robots punching monsters. I'm like, cool! That doesn't deter me. I don't know. And then some fans saw it, didn't like it. I'm like, oh, that's a little iffy. But, sort of like how you've always said, I'm going to go and make my own opinion. So I saw it with our good friend of the show, Monstron is what we call him.
Oh, yeah.
We saw it together. He's a big fan of the first one, too. So,
I have to interrupt and say, if you like robots punching monsters, I'm amazed you never got into Power Rangers.
I'll get into it now. Wait, no, that is... Yeah, I was going to say it's flipped, but no, it's not. The robots are still the good guys.
Yeah.
Fine, I'll get into Power Rangers. What do you want from me?
Anyway, sorry, random point. Moving on.
So, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, though. Probably I like the first one a little more, but here's the thing. The first one, the characters are much more memorable. And, the characters that stuck for this second one are also still good. And in fact, they do some interesting things with them. Some of them. The new ones aren't nearly as good, except for the main character who's played by John Boyega. He's always charismatic, and, his acting not really his character, but the way he performs is one of the things I like about the Star Wars sequels. So, like, that's one of the few things I like. But, anyways,
Sure.
I mean, okay, for the few that he's in, I really do like Rogue One, but unfortunately John Boyega's not in it. But it's not his fault. That's not, those movies aren't his fault. Anyway, so while I might not like the characters as much, the action and the creative, like, concepts, I think are actually better, which, coming from me, I think that's saying something, especially considering how crazy the action and creativity was in the first one. But they do a lot of good stuff from it. They really expand the world. What I'll rip off from it specifically is, like, the inventive ways you can expand your world and utilize concepts from the first to allow the events of a sequel to happen, even when the first one ends pretty conclusively. Like, the first one ended with the kaiju defeated and a breach that came from sealed. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Pacific Rim. I mean, I guess you probably assume that the kaiju didn't wipe out the world, but still.
Well, I mean, it is a movie, so what did it matter if it wiped out the world, I suppose?
Yeah, just movies don't like to end that way. But that would have been interesting than, like, the last few Jaegers.
Yeah, it would have been different.
Last few Jaegers desperately trying to fight back in a ravaged world. It's really a battle for nothing. That sounds bleak. Anyways.
You run out of pilots because you don't have people left to man them.
Right, exactly. Anyways, so the second movie came out and they still see kaiju, and I'm like, really, how does that work? Like, how does that not work without it being like really contrived? Like, oh, they just opened another portal. It actually worked really well. They work in elements that worked in the first movie and, like, bring it in a way that I did not expect. And also, it didn't happen until, like, halfway through the movie. The first half of the movie is like other things. Like, there's this mysterious rogue Jaeger that's, like, fighting them. And, like, so the portal managed to open up in a way that I did not expect. I guess I can... This is a little bit of a spoiler, but I'm not going to specify. They've got a man on the other side. But the kaiju do. They've got someone from humanity opens it up for them. Not going to say who, or what, or how.
Sure.
But that was really clever. So, I don't know, that just... Basically, if you ever write a story that ends in a totally conclusive way, and you want to write a sequel, you can make it work. You just have to be more inventive.
Just think about how many people... If you're talking about a world-scale phenomenon like Pacific Rim obviously implies because those monsters are doing a humongous amount of damage.
Right.
Think of all the people that you never show on screen. Any one of them could have an impact that, you know, comes back to haunt the other characters and later on, right?
Right. Well, also, the way they do it, also, it works with the first movie. Like, they managed to make it fit with stuff that happened in the first movie, and you think, oh, this logically progresses into that. So, you can make a way to keep the status quo in a way that's interesting. Like, a lot of people, well, okay, maybe I should say a lot of people, a few people, myself included, have an issue with the Star Wars sequels. Again, it's not your fault, joined by Higa. People didn't like how the First Order randomly appeared in The Force Awakens, which renders the events of Return of the Jedi like just utterly irrelevant.
Sure.
It just seems like it did so just to go back to the status quo, to have another big evil faction to rebel against, you know? And like they could have done that better. I think if they'd opened up with the First Order or something forming midway through the movie, and like they didn't suspect it coming, that would have been more effective rather than just it being shown up just because you go, oh, it's like the big evil.
Although by that time at the middle of the movie, the First Order would not have been big enough by the end to make a climax happen.
They could have, it just would have to be more secretive. They were that big, it's just no one knew it up until then. So it wasn't like there was
and I'm sure that there are quite a few people who think that the First Order is simply in the next offshoot of the last throes of the Empire, which
they could have been. I feel like they could have done better just to make it not seem like that the Return of the Jedi just didn't matter. Like, I don't know. I think they could have worked. That's just what I think. I don't know. Who cares? Anyways, that's what I'll rip
your
off.
Opinion. You're entitled to it.
Yep. What are you going to rip off?
All right. I got a few things. I watched Guardians 2.
Freaking finally. Sorry.
Well, actually, believe it or not, I watched it before Wonder Woman.
Oh, okay.
And before we watched Black Panther.
Oh wait, no, you were dead. That's right. I remember now. You told me this actually
last month that we were going to do that. Yeah. Anyway, so Guardians 2. The thing I'm going to rip off from that, utilizing quirks that the audiences might forget and give them more purpose. Obviously, in this case, in the first one, Quill is able to hold the Infinity Stone. I mean, he doesn't even need to link hands with everybody first. Obviously, they do.
I mean, it looked pretty painful, but still.
It did. It's supposed to vaporize a regular human being, of course.
Yeah, like, it was supposed to vaporize the whole planet if you let it get on Xandar. So the fact that he didn't get vaporized, something is definitely up. So
yeah, something is definitely up. But, because it ends so well and it's like, oh, this is such a nice movie, you don't really think about it. And then you get into Guardians 2, and they explain why. I loved that. I mean, it's kind of like a brick joke in a way.
It is.
But, it's just one of those things.
Well, to be fair, they did mention, they learned he was half Terran in the first movie, so they kind of hinted that, he was something that was more powerful. They didn't specifically say it, they just kind of implied it.
What it was, yeah. There was one example I was thinking of. Oh, okay. To go back to something from my childhood that used a phenomenon in a similar way. In Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the final season, they were thinking about, we want to change the suits to, re-energize the show. We'll keep the same characters, but we'll finally use different suits so we don't have to do so much of a juggling act on footage from Japan anymore.
Right.
And so they introduced this device called the Zeo Crystal.
Nice.
In the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And they split it up, and they used a whole plot about the Rangers recovering it and whatnot.
Right.
I'm not going to explain the whole thing now. It takes too much time. But rather than simply being this random item that has no further effect on the plot, they actually made it useful.
Nice.
Like, it was so cool. For those of you who don't know, the subsequent series was called Power Rangers Zeo.
that would make sense.
And the powers that they gain are from the Zeo Crystal that they rescued. It's like, oh my god, what a connection. That wasn't necessarily obvious until the next show came out, and the audience, if they had that kind of time invested in the show,
right,
would have noticed the connection. And I love that they paid that off. Next one is one that I'm really glad I found on the Japanese version of Netflix, and it's a very, very old Kamen Rider show called V3. It was the second show in that series ever.
Right. And
they have this really fun thing in the early days of Kamen Rider where they do their henshin pose, and it was always specifically the same.
Right.
I'm kind of thinking, like, I've never really done one with a set pose before. Like,
right.
Theoretically, if you had to in a pinch, you could shorten it and get in your armor before something bad hit you, right?
Right.
And they show lots of... And in more recent seasons, they'll show this explosion, and here they come out in their armor, because obviously they hinge into transform is the technical term in English. Sorry.
Nice.
But, like, here's the thing. I'm just thinking, wouldn't it be funny and kind of like almost the opposite of broken for a video game character if they had no choice but to be in the exact same pose, and if they can't do the motion, they cannot transform.
That'd be a good parody. Like, you have to pose before you fight, otherwise you can't fight. And then the bad guy, once he learns this, takes advantage of it and just shoots him mid-pose.
Exactly, shoots him mid-pose. He can't do anything. But like, but seriously, the length to which this character would try to keep the pose,
it's
like literally, okay, it's not an original idea, thus rip off, but like, it actually would happen that he'd start, and he was about to get into the whole thing, the whole rigmarole, and then somebody would, shoot something at him that forced him out of the slot, and then he'd have to do the whole thing again.
This reminds me, why don't they do this in Sailor Moon? Like, when they're transforming, it takes like 5 freaking years.
So long, yeah.
Like, if they have to do all that to transform into their Sailor Moon powers, just shoot them midway and make them start over.
Exactly. They never get it done. I can tell you treat what they call tokusatsu as a parody, but it is kind of fun. Anyway.
All right, what else? You got some other stuff here. Yep.
Another one that I watch, is the Kingsman movie, the first one, the Secret
I like that
Service.
one.
And so I gotta say I really liked it. First of all, I kind of wish I had time to watch the second one, but at the same time...
Second one I've heard is not as good. I've heard people either love it, or hate it, or like it.
Well, you know me, and I know where I'll probably end up on that spectrum. But what I can say
It'll be better than you thought it was.
Exactly. What I can't say is this, I didn't have enough time left over on that trip to make it work, but it was really close, so I sincerely thought about it.
Yes.
However, in the first one, and the thing that I really want to rip off, is, of course, they have their gadgets, because it's totally like, MI6 without being government sanctioned,
Right.
And so they have these regular, everyday items that you could use for the everyday purpose, and as a weapon.
I mean, they do that.
In the movie, it was an umbrella, and I'm just like, oh my god, that is so awesome. They thought of a way to weaponize an umbrella besides just, like, literally hitting someone with it.
Right. I mean, they do often do, like, a lot of things...
I love that.
Where, like, they have, like, a gadget that actually looks like another normal device, but becomes a gadget. But that's a particularly inventive one, so... I don't know. Yeah. Like, I like that.
No, so I'm just thinking, if I have a story that calls for it, I'd really like to use a daily item that could be weaponized somehow in a way that most, innocent bystanders would not expect, and still do it that way.
I mean, this is different. This is more like using anything as a weapon, not so much as a secret weapon. What was it that Ask a Ninja said? Remember those? His question that got at one point was like, someone broke in my house, there's no weapon nearby, what do I do? He's like, first off, there's no such thing as not having a weapon nearby.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, most of them would just be blunt objects, I suppose.
Well, it's like, I think he says at one point, I killed an intruder with just like my finger full of peanut butter or something. Like, just something, the most soft, mundane object you can think of.
Well, I mean, he probably, asphyxiated him, I guess.
Anyway, let's move on.
Okay. Moving on. The last one, I read, for the first time, I read this really, really well-respected and very, very old book, The Time Machine.
Good one. I like H.G. Wells.
Venerable H.G. Wells, yes.
I like that one. Morlocks, Eloy, yep. Good one.
And so I'm just thinking, like, if I have occasion for it, which with my alter ego character I might, but I don't know yet. Alien creatures that have sudden drastic changes to their biology just based on like events not explicitly on gender lines. Mm-hmm. Kind of based on how the Morlocks and the Eloy both come from the same race, but they evolve differently.
I'm assuming humans, right?
Yes. Except, it makes it sudden. So theoretically they could change back in the event of a reverse. Would be possible. I think that'd be a really cool idea for an alien race.
I mean,
obviously I haven't gotten to it yet, but we'll see if that ever happens. Anyway.
I mean, I don't know. I think it's cool. I always like the time machine. I just think it's a fun idea. It is the first instance of a time machine in fiction. That's where the term time machine comes from. However, it's not actually the first instance of time travel in a story. Can you guess what it is? It's actually something you might not expect. It's that same century, so the 1800s. I think this is the first one, anyways. I might be wrong.
Well, I mean, if your guess, I honestly don't know.
It's a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court.
Oh, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's. Well, of course, because there's no way that would have any connection otherwise.
Yeah, so like, that was that was the first instance, at least I think of actual time travel in a story. But the time machine is the first instance where it was like a device made by a human that manipulated it, like any other machine would.
As opposed to some inexplicable time loop dropping this guy from Connecticut.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So
got it. I mean, and it's really interesting. Like, I'm amazed. Like, he was smart enough to cast it so far out into the future.
Yeah, like 800,000
something.
something.
The book will still be extant by the time it actually reaches that point, And so nobody can check him. Unlike, say, Back to the Future 2, where, oh, guys, we're in Back to the Future 2 here. The Cubs are supposed to win the World Series. And they didn't until, like, 2 years later.
It's true. That's the way you do time travel. Just make it way too far that no one can prove you wrong.
Exactly. And you can make it as insanely crazy, but still somehow, like, similar as possible. That was really cool.
That is really cool.
I don't know if I'm going to get into time travel stories too much because they're really complex. So you really have to have your stuff together.
You want to hear a different story that travels insanely far in the future to the point no one can prove you wrong? Read Wild for Tomorrow! That no one knows about.
I was about to say that no one ever understands.
That running joke continues!
We never explained that. Jesus. Anyway, moving on to what we at the Writ have writ.
Alright, yeah. And this is taking a bit, but to be fair, we had a 10-minute long April Fool's Day joke at the beginning, so it's to be expected. Anyways. Alright, so, okay, I've, as usual, been writing just the third Megazoic book. However, I wanted to be more specific about this one thing. I'm not going to go into too much detail. This is kind of a fun little sneak peek, but I'm not going to go into, I guess, specifics as possible. But here's something I wanted to talk about, that I wanted to say why it's noteworthy, why I writ it. Why I writ it. That's a tongue. Writ it. Ugh. I hate that word. I hate this word so much. Like the writ.
I don't think it's correct grammar anyway, but moving on.
Who cares? Okay, so... Alright, about midway through the book. I'm not finished with the draft yet, by the way. But midway through the book, there is a huge battle. Like, and it's not just a huge battle. Like, the ending of the other books have had huge battles. There's huge battles throughout the series. This one's different. There's 3 different sides. There's 3 factions. It's a 3-way. It's a menage a trois, basically, but fighting.
Oh, jeez.
I actually make that joke in my book. Spoiler alert.
Yes, that small spoilers there.
Okay, so basically, yeah, it's 3 sides. They're each fighting each other. It's this wide open plain. You look at that concept wise, and you think, God, that's really complicated, and it is. Like it has to be built up quite a bit on why there's 3 different sides. Like, it has to be built up, like, why each one is against the other and what they want to do with the other. I have to keep it geographically comprehensible, I guess, because I want to make sure people know what the hell's going on and how I'm doing it, and, like, there's so many characters, so we're trying to make sure that each one of them have like their own little moment, and each element balanced off one another. This is actually one of the only times, if not the only time, that I've ever written an outline for just a single chapter. Like a pre-written
Well, I mean, because this chapter was such a big undertaking for you, I'm sure, to write that.
Yes.
To write those free-for-all battles on such a grand scale is kind of crazy.
And I want to make sure that, like, I don't use one character too often, so I kind of flip around. It's this character, and this character, and this character, and this character. Like, I don't want to make one character stand out too much. You know, like, they each have their moment, basically. So, it's really complicated. It's kind of crazy. So I wanted to ask you, David. And again, the draft's not finished yet, so he can answer however he wants. Don't take it as like, oh, this battle's going to suck if he says it sucks. I can change it. It's not finished. Yep. Did I pull it off, David? What did you think? You've read it, so...
I'm going to preface this by saying that with a written media, it is so difficult to convey multiple things happening at the same time.
Right, of course.
And it's really challenging when you have to, like, always think about... So, like, in my stories, whenever my rangers are fighting somebody, you always have to think, okay, well, what is this person doing? Do I need to explain it? Do I just ignore them for a little while? What's the acceptable standard on that?
Right.
And so here's the thing. Visually, you have the benefit of you follow whatever the camera's focusing on, and so the camera tries to pull you through, you know?
Right.
The Avengers Age of Ultron opening sequence.
I love that.
It was a great scene from this perspective. And so, you know, it tracks one, and then another enters, and so it follows the other one, you know, and it goes to that.
Right, but... Right.
Here's what I can say about it's good cinematography in that instance.
But like in terms of I'm saying like in terms of like that's the benefit of movies. This is a book, so it's more difficult.
Right. Right, it is. So here's what I'm going to say.
Yes.
If you're doing a free for all battle, this being anyone, Donald, myself, any of our listeners, if you're doing a battle like this, if you can try and be that camera. So, like, something cuts into the fight, and then all of a sudden you're following that one because your eyes are drawn to it.
Right.
Then it's a little easier to, you know, be dynamic in what's going on without, you know, necessarily taking too much time away from your main fight.
Right.
What was the biggest conflict in this fight? Might not make, I mean, well, I can't say it without spoiling the story, so I won't. But, you know...
You can just say the mood, I guess.
He chose one fight to really focus on, and there are so many different facets because both of the other factions are trying to attack this one, and of course the other as well, because it is truly a free for all. and so, you know, what is the old phrase that war makes strange bedfellows?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay. Yeah, no, I know. Like what you're saying about like segue, like making the quote unquote camera go from one thing to the other. I try to do that too a lot. Like a lot of times when it switched from character to character, it did so naturally. Like something got in their way that led into this other thing. So,
and that leads to my first point, and that Donald did really well.
Well, thanks. Again, he's not biased, guys, because again, he could say it sucked, and I could edit it. That's fine. Like I don't care. So
yeah.
So thank you very much, David.
And he had an outline, so he was trying to give everybody a moment in the sun. And he had to actually, I think you said you changed a couple of things before I got to it even, to try and balance it a little bit better.
Well, yeah, I did. I had to, like, rearrange stuff and, like, change certain things, yes.
Right. And so, you know, there was an honest effort to keep all of his players involved. Rather than, I'm focused on this fight in the center, so all the other stuff is just ancillary, and I'm just going to kind of ignore it and let it go, and, it's happening. But Donald didn't do that. Another good point in his favor.
Anything I think I could improve?
Well, I was, you know, kind of assessing it one facet by another, but sure.
Okay, well, if you want to keep... I just didn't know, like, if you were just going to keep kissing my ass. In which case, please do. It's very, very... But, you know, for the sake of being objective, you know...
Okay, so, unfortunately, with the camera, especially with written text...
Yes.
It's really difficult to, you know, write about all those things and have them on screen all the time. You just can't. There's no way you can make the lens wide enough to include everybody and do fair screen time and make your battle pace very well.
I love all these movie metaphors for a book, but, you know, it's the best way to convey it, so yeah. Go on.
I mean, it is, because I can just... feel that you did this with the movie scene that you're hoping to make of it in mind.
Oh, yeah, hopefully one day.
As I said, I rest my case in that regard.
You did. All right. So,
just trying to make sure that it's balanced, making sure that everything flows naturally, trying to keep the pace, get everyone involved. It's a hell of a balancing act.
Right. So,
and I think that, while on the whole the balance was good, you never really focus on that one action, and you know which one I'm talking about. That'd be the one as far as balance goes. That'd be the one takeaway. The other thing is that we had a long sidebar about whether the battle, which the chapter title kind of highlights the whole point, is this free for all.
Yes.
Should the chapter end at the end of the free for all or not?
Yeah, I edited a specific thing that you and I kind of disagree with. I'm gonna keep it for what it's worth, or maybe I'll change it. I don't know. I'm very indecisive. Again, the draft's not finished. But basically,
yeah.
So what it sounds like you're getting at here, my ambitions were really high, my task was really high, and I completed it probably 80 to 90% of as effectively as I could. I don't know, like this.
Well, okay, my verdict is this. Mm-hmm. I think for how much you had on your plate, you did an admirable job of completing it. I also think that you insisted on adding too much at the end of it.
I get that. I can get that. I'll work with it. Again, listeners, what you might eventually be reading might not have this problem because I fixed it. So thank you, David.
Or who knows? We'll see how it goes.
We will see. Anyways, well, thank you very much. So anyways, that's what I've written. What about you?
All right. Well, I actually did get some work done on the latest of Starburst. Finally, actually, some writing. I'm not done with that episode.
Nice, you did it. You did it.
I busted the slump, right?
Yeah.
I just need the time to sit down and actually finish the damn episode.
Well, you took those first baby steps. I'm so proud of you.
I made progress. Yeah. So, also, my one of my other roommates and I are doing a add-on story. I call it the tag story.
Yes.
I've got plans to do that, and I kind of have it. It's in my hands now. It's up to me what to do from there. But I finally figured out like an outline how I'm going to proceed, and so I just need to sit down and write it.
Yes,
and possibly, given our co-author contract, for more on that, see episode whatever of the Writ.
The co-authored one, it's episode 8.
Episode 8. Sorry, cheap.
I'm going to edit all these dings. It's going to be great. All right, go on.
Thank you. The ding counter in the bottom of the video screen. Anyway,
it went up even more. There we go. Okay.
So, based on the co-author contract that we talked about for the collaboration that Donald and I have hit it at for a while, it sounds like if we're going to have a substitute writer, that it'll be me, and so I'm kind of excited that if it gets back into my hands, what am I going to do with it now? And try and conference with the guy whose turn it actually is to make sure
by conference we mean intervention,
plans, right? by doing his plans justice. Anyway, I'm really excited because I love that story, and it has not been my time for quite some time. I took forever with the last portion that was mine. I'll admit that. But
those rules that we came up with in episode 8 of the Writ about like time frames and like schedules of it? We followed none of those. So we should probably listen to our own podcast.
Which is why we did the co-author contract and all agreed to it. So now we can from here on operate that way.
I guess that's true. We did.
Anyways,
eventually figure it out.
I also have had a couple of random ideas that I may have to throw into stories where I have the chance. There's one thing I was on a plane multiple times recently. I was on a plane and seeing how when you start to land and you have a bunch of boats on water, I'm just thinking, wow, a chase on water is not nearly as exciting as people want it to be.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a myth, you can't really hide on open ocean.
That's why there's often a storm, Whenever there's a chase on water, there's often a storm involved. Hide behind the shifting waves of the storm clouds. And then also that makes it more exciting. But in terms of like open ocean, it's kind of open. There's a reason why it's called open ocean.
It's kind of impossible. It's kind of impossible, right? So it's kind of a myth.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to lampoon that a little bit somewhere if I have the chance for it. And I might have I don't remember which episode I mentioned this in, but I did talk about the idea between the MO of a doctor versus the MO of a general. I finally found a place to use it.
Right.
If I can just convince myself to write it out of order, because Lord knows if I wait that long to get to that, I may never get there. That episode of the particular thing I'm thinking about writing.
Well, yeah, just write an outline, or maybe just write a brief synopsis of what you plan to do, so that when you eventually get there, you haven't forgotten it. I don't know.
Or at least a couple lines of dialogue, so the plot leading up to it doesn't necessarily affect it.
Right. Right, exactly. Well, that makes sense.
Anyways,
All right, that's
we've been going on for a little while about our usual segments because we also had to throw in the April Fool's Day
Right,
gag.
exactly.
So a quick intro to our topic for this month.
We finally figured it out. We finally gotten to this point. But, like, I don't know how we got back. It was a real mystery, isn't it?
Real mystery. Yeah, it's kind of a mystery how we figured all these things out. But that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about mystery. Why is it so hard to write good mysteries? I mean, I'm not saying there aren't good ones, but like for somebody who's starting out, it's probably going to be pretty bad. How can you take it beyond the like limits of the genre?
Right.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
So, in a true testimony, and like I guess it's real consistent with the amount of professionalism on this show, I have never written a mystery before, listeners. Okay, maybe that's not true. I've written stories with mysterious elements to it, but it's never really like the main
But it's
focus.
it's not really the whole point of the book is to solve the crime kind of a thing.
I mean, I have written... There's plenty of stories where I've written with plot twists, so I guess that's kind of an element of mystery. So in which case, yeah, sure. Like, it's the same sort of thing. You kind of want to make sure that who the real perpetrator isn't who you expect. You have, like, red herrings and all that stuff, which I guess we'll talk about here. So I've got some experience on elements of this genre, but not really too much.
Well, and I've read a ton of... I mean, for my own sake, I tried writing a mystery, and I ran into a couple of problems with it. One was time. I just didn't have enough time in the time frame I'd given myself to do what I wanted to do with the story. But some of the complications I had with that, I'll talk about a little bit too.
Yep. So let's.
But you know, I always loved reading mysteries. I read Hardy Boys. I read Nancy Drew. I read Encyclopedia Brown. I love Sherlock stories. I mean, I've read so many mysteries in my time.
And I really liked playing Clue. Colonel Mustard, I always knew it was you.
And he did it in the library with the carving knife?
Or like candlestick or something.
The candlestick, yeah. Or was it Miss Scarlet in the bureau?
Or Mrs. White in the ballroom. Damn her. I always knew she was up to something. Anyway.
They're all up to something.
It's true. I'm going to play Clue again. That's great. Anyway.
But yes, we...
Okay, I'm sorry. Side note already. Well, I remember one time I played Clue with my sister before I very quickly realized that Clue does not work with two people. You need more than two.
Yeah, it'd be kind of difficult to do with, without, like, four.
Yeah, you need, like, at least three. Three's the minimum. So.
Yeah, three's the minimum. Because if one person knows what happened and the other person's the only one guessing, then there really isn't much.
Yeah, you know who it... That was the shortest game of Clue ever. I don't... Anyways, Professor Plum, he did it. I don't remember. I don't know.
Oh, jeez. Anyway.
I love those names. Anyways,
mysteries. How do you get them beyond their confines? Obviously practice, but aside from practice, what are some tips from us at the Writ that you can take with you when you try to write your next mystery?
Yeah, or your first mystery in my case. But I'm gonna, as someone who's never written a mystery before, I'm gonna teach you twits how to do some written on these mysteries.
Because we are better than you.
We
anyway,
are.
Moving on.
Without even any effort, apparently. Alright, so, what can we do? You kick us off. You seem to be more experienced with this.
Alright, well, I'll start with this one then. Know your end game.
Yes. I mean, obviously.
I mean, okay. It sounds trite, but here's the thing. If you don't know where you're ending, then your mystery is going to be complex as all hell. And is it really going to work? Probably not.
I mean...
Do you figure it out ahead of time? That's up to you. I mean, that's probably the best.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be a mystery to you.
It should not be a mystery to you. You should know exactly where it ends.
Yeah.
But as far as how you get there, I mean, for everybody, it's going to be different. Another thing just worth thinking about. I don't have the answer for you, but just to get you thinking a little bit. How can you make your characters, the other characters, intertwined with the plot, but not expressly complicit in the whodunit?
Right. Well, that's why I like those kind of Agatha Christie, every character is a suspect thing is kind of an interesting way to go. Because,
Well, every character is a suspect is kind of nice, but I'm talking about the opposite. How do you get them involved without making them a suspect?
No, I get you. That does sound interesting. How would you make it so that they're not complicit, but at the same time, they might just make people think, oh, that's the one who did it. They didn't have anything to do with it. Red herring, I guess, which we'll get to.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about that, or you
Oh
want
yeah, segue! I did one without even realizing it. I'm so good. Okay. Red herrings. Is there a limit? Like, how many should there be, and how predictable should it be? Of course, it shouldn't be predictable at all, but how do you make it not predictable? Like, you can only pull the reader in so many directions. You can only have so many gut-wrenching twists before it gets old hat. Like, that's why Shyamalan's twisting, you know, it fell short pretty quickly. Like, everyone was expecting a big twist, so eventually it became that the big twist was that there was no twist. So,
I mean, that's the thing, though, with red herrings in particular. Like, how many times can you pull the rug out from under somebody, from your readers, excuse me,
right?
And, you know, have it not be impossible to figure out.
Right.
I don't know if there's like a set number. I think it depends on how big the problem is. The crime might be humongous.
Right.
And if you have a humongous scale, then you can probably have more. But like the small town, we only have a couple of suspects. You can only really have like one true red herring before you start to narrow it down, right?
It also depends on like how, like what the crime is, I guess, or like and what is going on with it. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Basically, I'm trying to tie this into my own book. Okay, this is for spoilers for Primeval Power.
If you want that, buy it on Amazon.com.
Indeed. Thank you very much. If you want to listen to this part of the episode, you have to buy the book. Do it now. See, this is how I'm selling it. Okay.
Save it. We will be here when you get back. Go buy it right now and read it.
Now that you've all read it. Okay, so let's get So, one of the big twists is, like, the fact that this character that Cortet has idolized since his youth, Sevalor, turned out to actually be Zul'Garen, which is a name that's been mentioned before the story as the mind within the cortex. Now, basically, this isn't really, like, there's not really a lot of red herrings to this, because no one really, I wasn't trying to make sure that no one really suspected that Zul'Garen was an existing character. But, like, one of the things I did to try and throw people off, maybe this is kind of like a red herring, is, like, not only does this character that Cortet has idolized since his youth seem good, and he gets seemingly killed by the character who is the villain of that story, also, he's a stegosaurus, which is not a villainous species. Like, most people think they're very nice, very dumb. Yeah, they got the spikes, but they're plant eaters, you know? They're fine. Like, they've never really been depicted. The closest is probably in The Lost World, when, like, the second Jurassic Park movie, where, like, the idiot character that's played by, what is her name? Julianne Moore. Like, she was such an idiot in that movie. She took a picture of a baby stegosaurus right next to the baby stegosaurus. Stegosaurus justifiably freaked out, and the parents came over and tried to whack at her with their tail spikes. That is just defensive behavior, but that is the closest that stegosaurus has been villainous in something.
And that's natural, so it's hardly, like...
Yeah, they weren't being malicious. They were trying to kill her.
Exactly.
Like she hid in a log.
There's no intent.
Yeah, she hid in a log, and the tail spikes went right through, so it's scary, but it's not... Yeah, it's like... It's just like, get away from my kid. So, yeah.
Yeah, so existentially, is a red herring explicitly a character thing? Or can it just be an idea?
In this instance, it might be an idea, more like, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, so think about it this way. Oh, you've got this scary Tyrannosaurus in your story, and everybody's like, oh, he's got to be the villain, right? Mm-hmm. But then all of a sudden it turns out to be the Stegosaurus. Is that, if that happened, which it doesn't, would that count as a red herring?
Possibly.
Or does it have to be a character who is a suspect, then proven to have an alibi?
That might just be more something interesting, like kind of a note. Although, to be fair, this is kind of like in the first book. Spoiler for that. Buy that on Amazon.com. The main villain is called the Tyrannian Kingdom, and they have a lot of Tyrannosaurus in their ranks. But the king of this world,
the Triceratops,
who happens to be named Tyranno. So it turns out that the name doesn't come from Tyrannosaurus, but from the name of this character, who is in fact not a Tyrannosaurus. However, he's actually not a villain either. So he's actually it also kind of fits. Anyways, let's end the spoilers there for that.
He's kind of a figurehead.
Exactly, so. But yeah, his son is the villain. But anyways, so all right, let's end the spoiler alert there, so people don't skip too much of the podcast if they haven't read any of it. So anyways, yeah, basically, red herrings are a very complex thing. Is kind of what we're going through. Like they don't, not just like who did it. You know, it's like, what is this?
Sure, it can be conceptual as well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you have too many of them, you know, it starts to just grate on the audience a little, because it's like, okay, seriously, get to the real thing. Mm-hmm. You're running out of space. You can't possibly have so many more red herrings to get through, right?
But at the same time, I feel like you should have at least more than one. Because I feel like sometimes it's too obvious.
Okay, it depends on the crime. It depends on what's being solved.
Mm-hmm.
because again, if you have just this small town kind of a deal, this like minor event, and there are only a couple suspects, by pure definition, if all of them are red herrings, then what the heck are you doing?
Right. Like, okay, an example of this that I think is like a example of a poorly done example, and if you haven't seen, I'll not skip this. Have you seen Big Hero 6, David?
Yes.
Okay.
But our audience might not have, so spoiler alert for Big Hero 6.
You know, I'm not going to put a time code there. I don't care if you haven't seen that. Plus, that came out like 3 or 4 years ago. Who cares? It's your own fault that you haven't seen it yet. You're clearly not interested if you haven't seen it yet. Go watch Big Hero 6 if you so please. Alright, you're back. Good. So it's way too obvious that one professor of his was the villain. Like, the only other red herring was this one other person who they kept repeatedly saying, this guy is meant to do this guy, like, is only in it for the money, oh, this guy wants to do this, oh, look at him, we think it's this guy anyways, we all think it's this guy, oh, there's this weird mask figure, we all think it's this guy, the mask comes off, it's the good professor, what?
What? No.
Like, they made it too obvious that the red herring wasn't him, because they were all even saying, it's gotta be this guy. And there was only one other candidate for it to be.
Well, I mean, okay, to be fair, this is what we expect of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we believe in them, we have this reputation of them in our mind, and so sometimes it goes against our expectation too far. We refuse to go to that brand of logic. Right? So that's not necessarily an incorrect reaction. In fact, it's quite common.
Right.
But, you know, for the audience, they might have figured out quite easily, okay, there's probably some deception at work here.
That's why okay, I'm not going to go into details because I don't want to have another time code, but for the second Megazoic book, the character that like turned out to be a villain, you think that it's not like they think that someone else who's obviously a villain. They don't think it's that person. There's no, like, the fact that this is a
There's
twist.
no substitute. There's no figure, oh,
right.
This is the guy. This
right,
is
exactly. Well, like, yeah, and, like, in fact, it's not even really, you don't even know it is really a guy at first until, basically, yeah, that's, I don't want to get into it too much with spoiling, but basically, yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine, but you mentioned something I want to use to segue back to another point that
right, yes.
we talked about ahead of time, and that is, you know, the balance between fakes and clues.
Right, yes.
Red herrings obviously are faking people out, but that doesn't mean they exist for no reason, of course.
Right.
And so there's going to be some times where you want to lead them down one path, this primrose path of, oh, it's got to be this guy, and then all of a sudden you turn around.
Yes.
You know, consider how many different detective series there are. Whodunits at this point are pretty familiar, so over time they tend to be quite predictable, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
Yep.
Scooby-Doo reference, I think. I don't know. I've never seen Scooby-Doo.
Yep, Mystery Inc. Yes. Anyway, but like that's the thing. It's one of those that you can't always have fakes. Sometimes you've got to have real clues mixed in, and sometimes those clues are not going to be precise.
Right.
And so implicates a whole lot of people, you know, and that's the point. You're supposed to narrow the field down, and the audience for the audience that is just as much fun, right?
Right.
And the more moving parts you have is chaos.
Exactly.
We talked about it with his three-way battle earlier. It's really hard to write all those things and balance them out, which means that you have to be on top of your game. You have to know what's going on. But the chaos is exciting to read.
Exactly.
Because who knows where it's going to go next.
Exactly. Like the reason why I attempted that for my battle and why this is good for a mystery is that when you pull it off, it's really good. Like, it's hard to do, but if you pull it off...
Yep.
Like, and what you're saying about, like, clues, like having a lot of them, and like, I like it, like, when the detective or whatever, or whoever's trying to solve this mystery, it's not so linear. He has to really figure it out. There's a lot of stuff that, there may be a lot of clues, but they're not, like, direct clues. There's stuff that, like...
There are a couple of leaps in logic that he has to take because there's just not enough evidence. Or the evidence is too broad, and so you can't really eliminate any names. Oh, this person has brown hair. We can't flip down, like, half of the board, you know, to reference another solving game.
Right, like, there has to be, like, a segment of... The person has to figure it out based on the clues that he has, and the clues can tell all the information. He has to still figure it out. God.
That game I just described, I cannot remember what the heck that game is. You know what I'm talking about, right? The one where it's like, does your person have brown hair?
Oh, you're talking about Guess Who, aren't you? The board game.
I think it is Guess Who. Yes, it is a board game. I couldn't remember the name of it.
The board game that's about mysteries, that's not Clue.
I did say it was different. Anyway,
I mean, the ones in Clue are all based off like color-themed names. Professor
right?
Plum,
No.
Mr.
I
Green,
understand that.
Colonel.
I remember it's a different game. I just couldn't remember who it was. And you're trying, it is guess who. You're trying to guess who the other person is. But like, if it's, oh, this person has brown hair. There's a brown hair at the scene. Well, that eliminates only a few suspects. But they're like half of the board is still brunette.
Well, that's because you have to like put a bunch of clues together. It's sort of like,
exactly.
well, it's like
You have to figure out the right questions to ask.
Exactly.
Whether you're playing Guess Who or whether you're the detective in this story trying to, unravel this mystery.
Hey, here's a thing that's kind of related to that. Geology. How do you think that people know rock properties? I've done some research based on my story that's going to inevitably come later. But also I remember this in like a brief bit of geology class I took in college. So one of the, every rock and mineral has a different set of properties. Sure. But in order to identify which ones, does it have this property? It does? Okay, that eliminates all these other minerals. Does it have this property? It does? Okay, cool. Then I'm
Yep.
So it's like, and of course I'm sure there's better examples other than frickin' geology. But
if it were only that simple, sometimes it isn't.
Anyways. So
sorry, let's go ahead and move on.
Yes.
We've got a couple more points to get to. So
publication order versus. Oh wait, no, that's you.
Take it. No, well, take it because I stole one of yours.
I said red herrings a little bit, to be fair, but yeah.
You did, but no, I took the other one above that.
Oh, that's right. Okay, we have a list here.
We're so professional, listeners.
We are so professional, and we're so good at planning things out. We should write mysteries. Okay, publication order versus writing order, basically. Should they be different? Write out the crime explanation for your lead crime solver. Write out the actual scene, I guess, and then work backwards to find hints. As opposed to just starting and hoping you come up with a workable, realistic solution. Yeah, I think absolutely you should know, pretty much, in my opinion, I mean, write however you want, but in my opinion, you should know exactly what happened, exactly how it happened.
Exactly. As we said earlier, know your end game, right?
Yeah, I think it's not just so much know... a lot of times when I plan stories, I know, the end game, but how I get there can be kind of, flexible. And this, I think it has to be rigid.
It has to be... I mean, it can't be too various. Sure, it's kind of fun. We were talking about prequels and how, you have to get back to point X.
Right.
However you get there, you can't change it if the other story is already out.
For more information, listen to episode 18, I had to think about it, of the Writ.
I'm just glad you finally had one that you actually had to think about. That's kind of hilarious. Anyway.
We have so many episodes. Speaking of which, this is episode 20. We're at a score.
We're at a score.
We're not short of a score anymore. We'll soon will be...
We're at a score. Anyway.
Yeah. We're at a score. The next one will be
So who's got the point?
Me, obviously. Anyway, was that ever a question?
Come on.
Was that ever in doubt?
Okay. So...
Okay, fine. Third party. It's my mother is in the lead.
Exactly. You listeners get to decide this, right?
Ooh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Vote on Twitter. # Donald or David.
Oh, Jesus. At Matthew Donald 64.
Okay. All right.
We'll save that for later, please. Anyway.
Sorry, let's go on.
So, actually, I was the one who came up with that example. So if you have the final scene, and then you work backwards from there. I think that's the easiest, because that way you don't have, let me drop this clue, and let me drop this completely unrelated that can't possibly work out to the same conclusion clue.
Right.
How the heck do you get to the end if you do that,
Exactly. No, it has to be pretty, interwoven pretty well, yeah, I think it's true for any writing that, it's good to know your end game. I mean, I guess it depends, but, for me, it's good to know your end game. But in terms of mysteries, it has to be so rigid that, it's, again, example of mine. I know, I'm not going to say here, because of course I'm not. I know exactly how the Megazoic series ends. I've known pretty much ever since I've started writing it. However, the way I've gotten there, that's changed quite a bit.
Sure, the actual details change in the process.
Yes, in
which
some
is
things,
natural.
Yeah, some things I'll be okay, I'll do this in the midway. I'll do this in the midway.
But a whodunit,
but
a true mystery,
you
can't really, you don't have that latitude,
right?
Because if you don't end in a sensible place, then it doesn't fulfill the audience. It probably doesn't even fulfill the writer, because you're trying to make all of these disparate clues come to a single point. And that's not realistic.
This
doesn't work
is,
all the
among
time.
other reasons, is why, personally, I cannot stand J.J. Abrams as a storyteller. Now, to be fair, The Force Awakens, this is actually not one of the reasons why I dislike that movie, even though he did direct it. He avoided that a lot. Well, I guess he kind of didn't. But, no, actually, no, he didn't, yeah, but anyways, that's not the reason I dislike the movie. He does the thing that's called, a mystery box method. This is what happened with Lost. This is what happened with other things I can't think of right now. I guess Cloverfield, a little bit. But, he puts together so many different clues and so many different things, like mysteries, like the mysteries, like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? He never has an end game. Like, he's really good at starting things and not finishing them, which came to bite him in the butt with Last Jedi, because all the mysteries that people wanted to figure out, spoiler alert for Last Jedi. God, I can spoil everything.
You do. You have no problems with that. By the way, fun random thing did you see the Marvel producers and stuff were saying, please don't spoil Infinity War.
That will not stop some people, but yes.
It's not going to stop. I was about to say, it's not really going to stop anybody, especially a particular co-host of mine.
Speaking of which, I need to order tickets for Infinity War. I need to order one for me, because I want to see it soon, and man, they're selling out. I got paid today, so I better get on that as soon as I get on.
Yeah, you better get on that. But I do know if you spoil it to me, I'm going to be really mad at you. So at least in my case, please follow their suggestion.
I mean, at least I asked with Pacific Rim. I feel like I would, at the very least, I would know
you did.
To ask for this. And I know you'd say no, so I probably wouldn't even do that anyway. So
yeah, you'd hope. Anyways, so that realistic, workable solution. Okay, so we both admitted that we don't have much experience with mysteries in particular. It's one of those things that this is advice for us to take as well, that until you really know how to juggle those pieces, keep your scale smaller than you want to. If you start out, this is going to be the biggest mystery I'll ever write, you probably won't finish it. And you probably will never write another mystery. So, keep your scale smaller than you need to until you've figured out the juggling of pieces, the balance between red herrings and actual clues, all of those things. It is a tightrope act, and you have to figure out how to traverse that rope before you can really get somewhere with a huge mystery. Because I just don't think that if you have no experience trying to write this big scale mystery will work most of the time. You can read as many detective novels as you want. It won't make you a better mystery author until you've actually done it.
Right. That definitely starts smaller.
If you have these huge plans that don't go anywhere because you can't pay off all the things, because you can't make the clues work in the same direction and implicate the one person you actually intend, it's going to tank your story.
Right, exactly.
If it's going to get confusing to you, how do you think the audience is going to handle it?
Not well, based on Last Jedi.
You have to know what you're doing. If you don't know how it's going to end, what's going to happen to your audience?
I mean, to be fair, I shouldn't really rag on J.J. Abrams too much for Last Jedi. That wasn't him who did. Maybe he does have a plan, and just Rian Johnson, the guy who did Last Jedi, just didn't follow it. So speaking of, scale, I agree. You should definitely start smaller. Also, which one is better, I guess, and can you do long form eventually? I think 100% you can, but you should start shorter. You should absolutely start shorter. Do something simple, like a novella, not quite a novel. It's 30,000 words. So something or even less. It doesn't have to be exact number. Just basically, don't make it a full-length novel. I don't think at first. Once you get more comfortable with that, maybe do a few more, and then eventually, do a big one. So,
sure. If you have a series, though, how does your lead detective, your lead crime solver, grow?
Right. Yeah, it could be kind of funny if he fell for the same mystery every time.
If he always got tripped up by the same things, if he never interacted with any different allies, if he never grew because of the people he interacts with. Sorry, I keep using he. Obviously, there are female detectives.
I mean, again, to bring up Scooby-Doo, they always seem to think it's a monster when it's actually never a monster. So,
well, I mean, that's the only evidence they have at the moment. Then they find clues that say, oh, this can't be real. This got to be somebody in a mask.
But you think, Fred or something, one of the more sensible ones. But not Fred, what am I talking about? Who's the girl? Velma. I think she would eventually be you know what, we always think it's a ghost. It's never a ghost. I feel after 99 times, logic dictates that it will not be a ghost either. And then Shaggy or something's well, that's what they want us to think. What'd we do, Scoobs?
Yeah, Shaggy is the coward. Okay, I hate to say this because Scooby-Doo is such a fun show, but it is so formulaic, you could watch one episode and get the general gist of about all of them. Minus, of course, the times that they do, crossovers with other characters. Because obviously that's the other character, too.
Do you know there's a direct-to-video movie release of Scooby-Doo that involves Kiss, the band Kiss? Then they are actually secret galactic defenders of the Earth who have a base on the moon. This is a real Scooby-Doo movie. It's
I've never seen that, actually. I've never even heard that existed.
I only heard about it based on this list of someone did the Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies. There are so many of them. They're still making them. There's one every year. And this one came out a couple of years ago. It looks pretty interesting. The animation's great.
So just a couple of examples here that I wanted to talk about for short versus long form. So I don't know Donald, you're probably not familiar with the Encyclopedia Brown series.
I've heard of the name. I know nothing else about
so
it.
Encyclopedia Brown is a kid detective, and he's really freaking smart. But, the mysteries themselves are solved within a single day, and because he's a kid, he can't charge very much to the people that say it's what is it, quarter a day plus expenses, I think, is the actual, fee. It's kind of cute. But,
that is cute. I like that.
He solves the case in, 5 pages, and the actual solution is then explained in the back for the readers in case they didn't actually already know. Which is, kind of a good way to cover your butt. But, to go from something like that to something with, say, Sherlock intentions, where there are some mysteries that are similar, and of course it's Sherlock's scale. He's more mature, he has more tricks in his arsenal, far more experience, you get that.
Right.
But there are also some very long form that even stump Sherlock kind of a thing.
Right. Well, Sherlock is a good example as well, because, you can go between one or the other, because Sherlock is not just novels, there's a lot of short stories with him as well, so...
Well, and then suppose it depends on the crime. Remember that whole thing we talked about, how many red herrings can you have? The bigger the crime, the more acceptable it is to have quite a few.
Right, although it would be kind of funny to have one of those Encyclopedia Brown ones. There's so many red herrings, it's to the point where, it's just, ridiculous. Oh my gosh, I saw that cricket there, it's going that way. Oh my gosh, there's a tennis ball. Oh my gosh, there's a dog. The dog's looking at me funny. The mother's...
I kind of think that between the caliber of mysteries that Encyclopedia Brown faces, as a kid, that would, A, never happen, and B, he's portrayed as extraordinarily smart. That's why his nickname is Encyclopedia, because he knows quote-unquote everything.
That's true.
So he probably wouldn't be fooled too much by red herring type stuffs.
I get you. That'd be funny though.
Literally. Okay, so there's one mystery. The local bully, his name is Bugsy.
Bugsy or just Bugsy?
Bugs. Crap, I can't remember. I think his nickname is Bugs.
Bugs Bunny.
No, it's not Bugs Bunny. I think his nickname is Bugs.
What? I'm sorry.
Anyway.
That's my Bugs Bunny impression. Just the sound.
What's up, Doc? Anyway, so Bugs, the local bully, swipes something, and the whole explanation he gives for it is, pretty good until he realizes that he talks about a squirrel. He sees this squirrel, according to Bugs, according to the bully. There's a squirrel that was backing cautiously down a tree and then took the thing.
That's
I don't know if you've ever seen squirrels actually go up or down trees, but if you've seen a squirrel go down a tree, they don't go tail first down a tree.
And if they do, it's not backed away cautiously. I feel like even if they weird circumstances where they did, it wouldn't be slow. It'd be damn fast.
Exactly. and so he figured out that this was just a fabrication, and the Bugs took whatever was missing. It's just simple things like that. There really is no red herring in it. It's simply knowing how the world works, and because he is so knowledgeable, it totally makes sense that Encyclopedia.
I mean, unless the squirrel was falling.
Well, falling has little to do with a tree, though.
I know, but it was falling, and it couldn't grip onto the tree, so it would be tail first. But that's
different, though. He literally said the squirrel was backing down a tree. I'm like, no.
And plus, squirrel claws, they're not like cat claws. They're always up. I mean, maybe they are. I don't know. Anyways, I don't. I mean, it's fine.
Well,
I'm assuming when Bugs was caught, he was like, I never should have taken that left horn at Albuquerque, right? I couldn't resist, anyway.
So I guess the upshot of this is, listeners, if you really want to write mysteries, give yourself the most information you can. Start at the end of your mystery. Work backwards is probably best. Keep your scale small. Also, do yourself a favor and read some mysteries.
Well, duh, but yes.
Whether it's Encyclopedia Brown, whether it's Sherlock, Nancy Drew, the Hardy Boys, there are so many options out there. And all of them provide decent
Great
models
Mouse Detective.
For you, worth
it's on
following.
Netflix.
Or is it? I can't speak to that one. But anyway.
Well, I mean, it's based off of Sherlock Holmes, so anyways.
Yeah. So I think we've gone on long enough about mysteries, how you can take them beyond the confines. But, start in a manageable place before you start trying to bust out the genre,
Right. No, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think it's definitely best to start small than with mystery. I mean, any story especially, but mysteries, Very much so. Like, because there's just so many pieces you have to juggle. Even for like a smaller scale one, you still gotta know how it all ends, you know?
Right,
so.
because you have to work back to that point somehow. And if you don't have at least some skeleton framework of a plan, then you're likely not to get there, which means what's the point of you trying to lead the readers in that direction? Because it won't work, right?
Right.
No,
of course
if
not.
you have any more questions about mysteries or other genres that you want us to give this treatment to, how can people get a hold of us?
I think next one we should do, like, romance, because we have no experience on that one, so...
Well, I mean, both of us have had girlfriends, so I suppose it's not none, but writing them is sparing. Like, within other stories, you know.
Right. Yeah, I was just a thought.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm very lonely. I think I might write some romance ones with me and someone else who won't never...
With you in your chair that you live on. Anyway.
I love this chair so much.
Well, I was about to say, the first one would have to be to your bird. But anyways, moving on to, if you want to get a hold of us. I love that bird. He's email works. We already talked about it up above with the... written in
right,
it.
No, like, but it's still just, let's refresh their memory. You know,
sure.
Like, if you want to get a hold of us, you can email us.
You
don't have to spell it out because we did it earlier.
No, I spelled it out earlier, thus I don't need to now. They can just go back and listen to it again.
Yeah, exactly.
So
specify which one, when you have a question, because we're both Matt D. Yep. And you can use your own email system or the one on my website, which you can find at MatthewDonaldCreator.com.
Absolutely. You can find links to information about his books. You can obviously get those on Amazon. That's a little different, of course. But,
right.
You know.
But, like, you can find this episode on iTunes.
Yep.
Please leave a comment.
Like it, comment, tell all your friends and family. We'll try and censor out some of the more egregious, non-child-friendly things so, kids can actually listen to the podcast.
I don't have to check the explicit tag on iTunes.
Exactly. Yeah. That'd be silly. You'd cut off so much of an audience.
Honestly, at this point, we probably have already passed it, and there's no one's bothered to check. Like, some of the things we've said. Like, even not, like, actual, like, real swearing, but just some of the jokes.
Depends on how you edit it. Anyway, minus all the knitting bogus, although I do want to make a quick shout-out to my dad, was actually the inspiration for this idea. He had this thing on Facebook.
Thank you very much,
Mr.
David Sr. I know David's not really your last name, but that's what I'm going to call him.
Well, actually, his middle name is the same as mine, so David Sr. is actually kind of relevant.
That's true.
Anyway, so he actually had this thing on Facebook about it's too bad you guys don't talk about like yarn and needles or something. You'd call it the nitwit.
And then we were like, hey, next month is April, so yeah, let's do that.
So have to thank my dad for that. But anyways, all the professional links, Facebook, Twitter.
Yep.
You have Instagram too, right?
I do, but it's not professional. I don't have that yet.
Oh, okay.
I'll get to that at some point.
Well,
I do have one, but
yep. Anyway,
I mean, if you want to find me on there, fine.
Okay,
you don't
fine.
have to.
But if you want to find Matthew Donald on Twitter, you can do that at.
Well, okay. Well, hold on. First, hold your damn horses, David.
Jeez.
You can follow me on Facebook at Matthew Donald Creator or my Twitter. So you just wait 5 damn seconds.
Seriously, we're running over time. I figured why not cut some out? Jeez.
No, we're not. This is not even close to like our longest one.
I'm not saying about our longest, but it's already like over an hour of solid material you can't cut out.
Great. Good quality content. Quality and quantity. That's the way to go. Anyways, so I know you're really excited for my new 64 joke, so I'll say that. So yeah, basically you can follow my Twitter at MatthewDonald64. Why 64? Because this is why, David. This is why. Because my largest quilt was 8 feet by 8 feet. But obviously,
what?
I said already. Leave me alone. Shut up.
Oh, you gotta make it different. But what are we gonna do? We're gonna run out like within the next couple of years. If we get past 64, we're gonna run out of 64 plus jokes for this 64 thing, and we're never going to actually come up with
that's what makes it special. We're going to have to keep up with new one. We have to be creative. So why... Okay, fine, I'll come up on the fly. Improv is the way we do.
Us two twits who talk about writing all the time sure love to do that, don't we, Donald?
We do love the... Why 64? Because...
Oh, you don't have to actually make a new one. It's fine.
I'm going to do it, damn it!
Oh, okay, fine. I'll get out of your way.
Because... Okay, I got it. Why 64... Because I had to edit out 64 minutes of me thinking about this joke. So, you see that there was a long pause there that I edited out completely. He was really bored there. He got lunch. How was your lunch, by the way, David?
My lunch
was
it
good?
Delicious. Although I'm imagining at your time, it's probably not lunch so much as like a midnight snack.
Ugh, I'm really hungry now. All that pondering has made my stomach start to growl.
Anyway.
All right, yep, that's the Writ-wits.
All right,
and we'll be back next time.
We're us two twits to talk about writting. We're better than you, even though
for
we're
real,
probably...
not knitting, writting.
Not knitting. We are continuing to write. I promise. No more
for
tricks.
Now.
Well, until maybe next April. Who knows? We'll see. Who
knows?
We're so unpredictable.
Oh, what can we do? Who can
ever
be
figure
trusted?
out who done it?
It's a real mystery.
Who done it, Matt?
Isn't it?
Who done it, Donald? I don't know. But that's for the listeners to figure out.
It was Professor Plum.
Until next time, we'll talk more about something else. See you next time, listeners, with more from the Writ. Until then, keep writing. I'm Matt David.
I'm Matt Donald. Keep writing. Knit if you want. I don't care.
Well, if you need knitting advice, go somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know what knitting is. I don't know beep about knitting. There we go.
Until next time, listeners. Bye.
Bye.
The Writ.